Okay guys, we're going to talk about another HTML element today, two of them, one called div and one called span. Now you're going to open up a new Glitch account and you're going to call it lesson 7 notes. Okay, now once you do that, you're going to take away everything that's in between the two body tags like we normally do, keeping the body tag, the open and closing body tag, and the closing HTML tag. Now just like paragraph and the heading tags, div is just an HTML element. So I can say div and then I can actually close it. And it's just, div stands for division. So it just creates like a box inside of the HTML, just like a standard box that maybe has some content in it, maybe doesn't. And we actually don't even see this division unless we do something in order to see it. So I could type something in here and say hello, and you could see that. I could also take away the words here and just create like a colored box here by going into CSS. Let me remove all this stuff, and I could style out my div. Now before I style it out, let me go back to the HTML and actually name it, because I'm going to make the thing about divs, and actually I should be in the opening div tag. The thing about divs is that they are just like general categories of divisions. They're not like paragraphs or heading tags. So you generally have to give them IDs so that you can name them in order to style them separately from each other. So I'm going to call this first. And if I go into my CSS, I can say hashtag first, and then add a background color, making sure to spell it correctly. Let's say aqua. And I don't see it yet. Okay. And the reason why this is unless there's actual content in the division, it won't have a width. It will only have a width. If I go back into the HTML and in between my opening and closing div tag I add a word like hello, then all of a sudden my division will stretch across the entire page. Okay. And that's actually going to be the distinction between division and span. Span only will stretch across as the length of the content that you have in it, whereas division will stretch across the entire page. So here is my div here. Let me show you how to, if I wanted to change the width of it, I could go into my CSS and just say width. And I could put it at like 100 px like that. Okay, I can actually give it a height. I can make it a box if I want it, a height of 100 px. And then all of a sudden I have my I have a division, a box inside the page that has a particular width and height. So it actually just looks like a box right here. Now if I went in and I added another div, so let's say I copy this one and I paste this, and I take out the word hello, and I call my div ID. See, it has a problem with having two IDs named the same. So I call my ID second. What you'll notice is, again, I don't see the div here. But if I start to style it out in my HTML, let me copy this and paste it here and call it second and change it to dark gray, let's say. I can all of a sudden see another box here that starts on a separate line, right? So divisions are line elements where if you create a second division or a div, it will start on a new line. This is different than a span. So here I can add content into my div if I want to. I can even align that content to the center by saying text align center, like that, and all of a sudden my hello is aligned to the center. I can also mess with the padding so that it is it has a little padding on top like that, but that pushes out all the padding all around. You'll have to think about how to get padding on the top but not padding but not making the box any bigger. That's part of what the assignment is. Remember, you can adjust the padding by saying padding top, padding right, padding left, padding bottom, with putting a dash in here like that. So if I just wanted to direct the padding to the top, I could do that. But the second one, if I wanted to actually create the div, I actually have to just give it a width and a height here. And they don't have to be the same. I could just put this at 200 if I wanted to. and this would end up looking like that, right? Or I could switch it so that the rectangle is the other direction if I wanted to, right? So that the divs look very different. Now, this is different than what we call a span. A span is another type of box that you can use for HTML. So I'm going to make a span just like that. And again, I can add things in here like hi, and so I can see the span, otherwise I won't see it. Now a span, let me give it an ID, so let me get ID equals, let's call it third, even though it's the first span. Not very creative today. So third, let me give it a background color of golden. That's not a color, gold is a color. Of gold. So you'll notice that as soon as I give it background color, it spans across the entire word. And that's the thing about span, is that it actually won't, it's not a line element. It won't go across the entire page. It will just span across the words that are inside of it. I can change the width if I wanted to, like that. But you would have to actually just push that out manually. I can't tell if it's actually changed the width. Let me see. Oh, no, it actually still continues to span across the just the element. So I could change it to 100 px, and it just actually covers the content inside. Now the thing about span is that you can actually put multiple spans on the same line. Whoops. Let me take this and copy this. And what ends up happening here is that the spans end up being on the same line. And at this point, it's going to force me to actually create a class because it doesn't like the spans being called. And the HTML, if I switch to class, I have to put a period in it. It doesn't like the HTML, the elements having the same ID. Anyhow, I could make a bunch of these and they would just sit next to each other like that. Okay, in the CSS I could change, let's see what happens if I change the height of a span. Okay, so it still doesn't change the height of the span. I could change the font size to make it a little bit bigger if I wanted to, but that's really the difference between span and division. Is division I could manipulate that a little bit more. Now for the practice here, you are going to be given a file with HTML in it, but with no CSS. So here, if you just look at what this looks like, it has all of the words that are on the file, like hello, goodbye, more content stuff, hard to read, hi, hi, hi. And I'm going to give you a sheet that shows you different levels of this. You're going to style it out, going into the CSS and adding style, using the ID or the class in here. Now remember that if you're going to style this ID, so for instance, you're going to go hashtag red, right? Because that's the ID that I created in the HTML. So you're going to go in there and create something. This is the top level, so you're going to make this look certain ways by changing where the boxes are on the page, changing the colors of the boxes, trying to get them as close as possible to the colors that I have here, and just trying to figure out generally how to make it so that things look like this. This is the top level, but there's another level, a couple levels below this, and it's outlined on Google Classroom. Okay, have fun.